I'm 82 years old, and I've been a widower for 3 years now. We were married 55 years. People like to call that a blessing. They say it with a kind of admiration, like we won something. I used to nod and smile when they said it. Now I just nod. The house is quiet in a way I never imagined it would be. Not peaceful, just quiet. There's a difference. When you're young, 55 years sounds like forever. When you're my age, it feels like a long afternoon that slipped by while you were busy doing something else. I sit in my chair most evenings and look at the wall where her photograph hangs. I don't talk to it. I wouldn't know what to say. The things I should have said, I had 55 years to say them. That's the part no one talks about. We met when I was 22. She was 20. I remember the dress she wore the first time I saw her. Light blue with small white flowers. I remember thinking she looked steady. That's the word that came to me. Not glamorous, not wild, steady. I was drawn to that. I didn't come from much. My father worked long hours and said very little. My mother loved us, but she was tired all the time. I decided early that I would build something solid, a house, a career, a marriage that didn't fall apart. That was my idea of love, stability. We married young, too young probably, but that's what people did. We had very little money and a great deal of certainty. I got a job at a manufacturing plant. She worked at a small office until our first child was born. Then she stayed home. That was the plan. I thought being a good husband meant working hard, so I did. I took overtime whenever it was offered. I said yes to promotions that kept me later and later at the plant. I told myself I was doing it for her, for us, for the children we would have. And we did have them, 2 boys, loud, curious, always running. I loved them. I just didn't always have time for them. That's how it starts. Not with betrayal, not with shouting. It starts with, I'll make it up to them on Saturday. It starts with just a few more years of this. It starts with the belief that there will always be more time. She never complained much. That's another truth. She'd have dinner waiting. She'd tell me about the boys' day. I'd nod, half listening, my mind still at work. Sometimes she'd pause, waiting for me to ask a question. I didn't always notice the pause. I told myself she understood. I told myself she knew I was tired. In our 30s, things improved financially. We bought a bigger house, took 1 vacation a year. I remember a beach trip when I was 37. The boys were building something in the sand. She called me to come look. I said I would in a minute. I was reading a newspaper article about the company merging with another. I wanted to stay informed, responsible. By the time I walked down to the shore, the tide had already washed their castle away. They were laughing about it. She wasn't. It seemed small at the time. That's the danger. The moments that matter rarely announce themselves. In our 40s, the house got quieter. The boys became teenagers. They needed me less, or so I thought. She began volunteering at the library. She made friends there. I was glad. It meant she wasn't lonely. We still sat together at night, watching television. Our knees touched on the couch. Sometimes she'd rest her head on my shoulder. I took that as proof we were fine. We didn't fight much. We didn't threaten to leave. We paid our bills on time. By every visible measure, we had a good marriage. But there's something that can fade without either person naming it, a kind of aliveness, a curiosity about each other. I stopped asking her what she dreamed about. She stopped telling me. When I turned 50, the company gave me a plaque for 28 years of service. They shook my hand. I drove home feeling proud. She had baked a cake. "I'm proud of you," she said. I believe that was love. Achievement recognized. Cake on the table. What I didn't see was how much of herself she had set aside. Her interests, her ambitions. She had once talked about going back to school, becoming a teacher. I told her it would be hard with the boys and my schedule. She nodded and said maybe later. Later is a dangerous word. It stretches out in front of you like a wide road. You don't realize it narrows. In our late 50s, the boys moved out. The house felt too big. She suggested we travel more. I was still working. Retirement was coming, but not yet. Soon, I said. When I retire, we'll do all of it. She started walking in the mornings. I slept in on weekends, catching up from the week. She would come home with a little color in her cheeks, telling me about the park, the ducks, the woman she met who had just moved into town. I listened, but I didn't go with her. I thought we had time. Retirement came when I was 65. They gave me another plaque, another handshake. I cleared out my desk and drove home feeling unsteady. For the first time in 43 years, I didn't know what Monday would look like. She had coffee ready. Now we can start, she said, smiling. And for a while we did. We took a trip out west. We visited old friends. We sat on the porch in the evenings and talked longer than we used to. I began to see things I had missed, the way her hands had changed, the fine lines around her eyes. There were moments when I felt close to her in a way I hadn't since we were young. I remember one night sitting in the dark living room, the house silent around us. She said, "I always wondered what you were thinking about all those years." I didn't know how to answer. Work, mostly. Worry, plans. I had spent so much time preparing for a future that was already gone. The turning point came quietly. It wasn't dramatic. She found a lump. She didn't tell me right away. That still stings. She said she didn't want to worry me until she knew for sure. When she finally did, I felt a fear I'd never known. The appointments, the sterile rooms, the smell of antiseptic. I held her hand. I told her we'd get through it. I believed that hard work could fix this too, the way it had fixed everything else. But there are things you can't solve with effort. The treatments took her hair, then her strength. I began driving her to every appointment, sitting beside her in the long hours of waiting. For the first time, nothing else mattered. Not money, not reputation, just her breathing next to me. One afternoon, while she was resting at home, she said, "We had a good life, didn't we?" I said yes, quickly, too quickly. She looked at me for a long moment. "I just wish we had talked more," she said, not accusing, just honest. That was the moment clarity came, not like lightning, more like a slow ache spreading through my chest. I realized how often I had chosen productivity over presence, how many dinners I had half heard, how many small invitations I had postponed, not because I didn't love her, but because I assumed love would wait. She passed away on a Tuesday morning. The room was quiet. I was holding her hand. I remember thinking how small her hand felt in mine. I had held that hand for 55 years, and yet it felt like I was touching it for the first time. After the funeral, people came by with casseroles and kind words. 55 years, they said. What a blessing. I nodded. Here's the truth no one talks about. A long marriage is not automatically a deep one. You can live beside someone for decades and still leave parts of them untouched. You can be faithful, responsible, loyal, and still miss the heart of it. I don't regret marrying her. I don't regret the children, the house, the ordinary days. I am grateful for them, truly, but I regret the delay, the waiting, the assumption that there would always be another evening to sit and really listen. Now the evenings stretch out in front of me, and there is no one to listen to. I walk through the house and see evidence of her everywhere, a cookbook with notes in the margins, a sweater still hanging behind the bedroom door. I find myself wanting to tell her about small things, a bird that landed on the fence, a memory that came back to me. And then I remember. People think the hardest part of losing a spouse is the day they die. It isn't. It's the 1,000 ordinary moments afterward when you reach for them and they aren't there. If I could go back to my 35-year-old self, I wouldn't tell him to work less or make less money. I would tell him to look up, to notice the pause in her voice, to ask one more question, to sit at the edge of the bed at night and say what he's afraid of instead of pretending he isn't afraid at all. But you can't go back. You can only sit with what you did and what you didn't do. I don't think she doubted that I loved her. I hope she didn't. But love unspoken has a thin sound to it in the end. It echoes. When I visit the cemetery, I don't talk much. I stand there and let the wind move through the trees. I tell her I'm sorry for the times I wasn't fully there. I tell her I see it now. I don't know if that matters. Maybe it only matters to me. If you're listening to this and you still have your person beside you, don't assume the years ahead are guaranteed. Don't wait for retirement. Don't wait for the kids to move out. The small moments are the life, the conversation you're too tired to have, the walk you're too busy to take. I thought love was proven by endurance. 55 years certainly looks like endurance, but love is also attention. It's curiosity. It's choosing again and again to turn toward the person sitting right next to you. At 82, I understand that now. I sit in my chair in the evenings and let the quiet settle. I don't fight it anymore. We had a good life, not perfect, not tragic, just human, full of decent intentions and missed chances. If this meant something to you, if it sounded familiar, then maybe that's enough. Maybe my 55 years can still reach somewhere. The house is quiet. I suppose that's the final lesson. In the end, all the noise falls away. The work, the schedules, the plans. What remains are the conversations you had and the ones you didn't. I had 55 years. I just wish I had understood them sooner.